will become the first woman in U.S. history to hold that role. Susie Wiles worked as Trump's 2016 Florida campaign director and then as a senior advisor for this time around in 2024. She first worked for President Reagan's 1980 campaign, and she also played a role in getting Rick Scott and Ron DeSantis each elected governor for the state of Florida. Team Trump is in the process of putting together the rest of his administration because, as you know, the chief of staff kind of goes first and is so important, pivotal in choosing everybody else in terms of staff and all of that. So with that piece in place, he's now looking at some prominent names, including lawmakers and past Trump cabinet members that are being floated to fill out his cabinet. So some Democrats are spending their time and energy on something different, and it's all about fear.
We have to have a to-do list of what we're going to do to protect this country and not let Donald Trump turn the lights out on democracy.
So we have to anticipate the worst. He could also significantly erode our democracy here at home in ways that could last for generations.
So I worry that he's going to appoint people who are willing to do his worst bidding and who are willing to enforce his worst instincts, which would be even worse than what we saw in his first presidency.
Well, he didn't do that in his first term. So I don't know what that fake fear is about, but they're spewing it. President Biden notably shifted his tone yesterday after years of harsh anti-Trump rhetoric.
I direct my entire administration to work with his team to ensure a peaceful and orderly transition. That's what the American people deserve. We're going to be okay, but we need to stay engaged. We need to keep going. And above all, we need to keep the faith.
Senior White House correspondent Jackie Heinrich has more. Jackie.
Harris, I think we all know someone in our lives, either at our work or online, who was disappointed in the election results, and they were scared because they listened to what the administration and Democrats had been saying about the prospect of another Trump presidency, and they believed them. And so yesterday I gave Karine Jean-Pierre, the press secretary, a chance to explain what the president meant when he said we're going to be okay. This was her answer.
This administration message to millions of Americans that they're going to wake up the day after the election if Trump won and have their rights stripped away, that democracy would crumble, and the president said today we're going to be okay. So how do you swear that?
You're just twisting everything around, and that's really unfair. No, it is. No, Jackie, it's unfair because I've been standing here trying to be very respectful to what happened the last two nights ago. Being respectful.
We weren't twisting her words around. Here they are.
You've heard from the former president himself saying that he is going to be a dictator on day one. To be praising Adolf Hitler is dangerous, and it's also disgusting. That type of language is hateful, it's disgusting, it's inappropriate, and has no place in our country. The president has always been very clear-eyed about this, about the threat of the former president represents to our democracy. When this president decided to run in 2019 and also in 2020, he was very clear. He was very clear on what he was seeing, right? He was seeing that our democracy was under attack.
Well, if the press secretary couldn't quite parse the difference there between what we had been hearing out of this administration for so many months of this campaign and what the president said yesterday, some Harris staffers are now able to do that themselves. Here's what Axios writes. That message didn't resonate with some Harris staffers. It was detached from the reality of what happened, one said. We are told the fate of democracy is at stake, and then the message was, we'll get them next time. And here's one Harris surrogate, by the way, who was a member of the Democratic National Finance Committee, a major player in shaping this election. Even she is starting to say out loud that people in her party need to get used to acknowledging that that rhetoric was a problem.
It was a red wedding style defeat. It was a catastrophe. This wasn't a squeaker. It wasn't a margin. It wasn't a margin of error race. She resoundingly lost. And we really have to be introspective and realize that we cannot just call Americans racists and bigots and say that that is the reason why Kamala Harris lost. There are other reasons that we can go into, but you can't just vilify the entire country. It doesn't work like that. And that's not conducive to a productive conversation. And you're going to keep losing if you alienate the voters.
The only reason that we did get yesterday in the briefing for potential cause of Democrats' sweeping losses was the pandemic. The press secretary said that it had an impact on incumbent parties all over the world. Harris.
Jackie, thank you. The voices of the voters apparently not heard or being ignored by Democrats, at least some of them. They already have been plotting to push back against a Trump presidency. The New York Post cover says, "Blue who?" with a distraught-looking Nancy Pelosi. Well, she looks like she's crying. And here's some of that Trump resistance.
People have often said that I'm a happy warrior. To anyone who intends to come take away the freedom and opportunity and dignity of Illinoisans, I would remind you that a happy warrior is still a warrior. You come for my people, you come through me.
Despite what has happened on the national stage, we will continue to stand tall in the face of injustice, revenge, or retribution. It is my sworn duty and responsibility to lead that fight.
Can you imagine being a criminal in her district and having any sort of conservative politics known about you? She just put out a threat for anybody. She wants to go after Trump. I wonder if she'd go after his supporters. It's a fair question. A lot of them in New York. California Governor Gavin Newsom called for a special session to, quote, Trump-proof the state. He said California is ready to fight. We refuse to turn back the clock and allow our values and laws to be attacked. Senator Marco Rubio struggles to make sense of that reaction.
Well, first of all, resistance to what? Resistance to what the American people just voted for? In the history of the Republic, no candidate for president has been clearer about what they're going to do in the simplest language possible. He's going to secure the border. He's going to bring down prices for energy and other things in America. And he's going to make us strong in the world so that we don't have a war. He's been very clear about this. I mean, no one's been more explicit. And people voted for that overwhelmingly.
Tammy Bruce, Fox News contributor, is here. Look, so, you know, there's anger, there's finger pointing. None of it is in the mirror, however.
Right.
I'm wondering, how bad is this going to get before it gets better? Because I have optimism. It will get better.
Well, this is why the sweeping victory was important. So there were no excuses. You actually had to look and realize that maybe for a moment, and especially younger people realizing maybe we're the ones out of step. Maybe we're the problem. Or when I got out of the left, it was a realization that I had been lied to. When I first got on talk radio, I'd been lied to about the nature of conservatism, of Christians, of what was happening in America. And that is what helped me make the shift. If they're lying to me about that, what else were they lying to me about? This is one of those moments. But so many people realize that even with all this rhetoric, and I can tell you in the New York City boroughs, Donald Trump went ahead in every single borough, gaining 94,000 more votes than he did in 2020. And Kamala Harris, though, this is the real story, has received 573,000, over 500,000 fewer votes than Joe Biden in just the 5 boroughs of New York City. So this was a wholesale rejection of all of their rhetoric, of what they were saying, of the hate, of the violence, of what James was saying. You know, Lady Justice is supposed to have a blindfold on for a very good reason. You're not supposed to apply bias or hatred or partisanship to people that you're looking at regarding crimes. And she certainly does not want to let go. I don't know what she's afraid of, but she seems to be afraid of something.
Well, I get it. Look, they got to subvert the people's choice and put Biden to the side and replace him with Kamala Harris. And you could see the jubilance in his steps as he literally jogged to the lectern yesterday in the Rose Garden, mentioned her one time, and then talked about reaching out to Trump and transition unity and peaceful transference of power. I mean, it's the subversion of people's choice, and they want to do it again and again and again. And this time, they were caught.
Yes, and now hopefully this time they've imagined that they were in the majority, that everyone else was a Nazi or a semi-fascist, and they imagined it was a small group. Now they can't deny, and we've heard that in some of the clips, that in fact was wrong, that this is a movement through every state, every county, ranging from London Breed, the mayor of San Francisco, losing, to a woman who's put in jail because she refused to close down her salon in Dallas during COVID. She won a Texas House seat. This is everywhere, and it's beautiful.
Well, and you had a good point. They knew. They knew. Let me get to this. Former Obama top advisor David Axelrod with these worries for his entire party after Tuesday's bruising.
I do have concerns about the way the Democratic Party relates to working class voters in this country. I think Biden has done, programmatically some good things for working people, but the party itself has increasingly become a smarty pants, suburban, college-educated party, and it lends itself to the kind of backlash that we've seen.
That's interesting. He sees, and he started calling it early on, David Axelrod, of what potentially could be down the pike.
But we didn't hear anything that blunt.
No.
And everyone saw this happen. It didn't just happen this year. This has been going on for a decade. We've seen this. They say, oh, we've been held hostage by the far left. So they have no free will. They're supposed to be the leadership of the people.
Bernie Sanders.
It's an astounding. I think they believe that they could bully themselves out of it. Nobody likes a bully because bullies, they threaten you, they pressure you, they try to destroy your life. It wasn't just with Trump. It happened to all of us. The daily threats, the inflation, the calling us names. This was, well, the Trumps went through the most. This was, as everyone is wondering, why do I feel so much lighter, and I just feel exhausted? Because we've been under attack for a decade, and Americans finally said enough is enough.
12 of the last 16 years in the White House have been Democrats. So I hear what you're saying. The transfer of wealth, though, the only gap that Kamala Harris gained voters in were those who made more than $100,000 a year. That is fascinating. They, in fact, have become the party of the elite. David Axelrod was talking about the disconnect with the American people there. They couldn't subvert the people's choice this time because they were just selling the wrong stuff.
And it was too much. It was too wide. Yeah.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
It's been a big week. Glad you were here. President-elect Trump's victory could mean the end of his legal cases. A victory not only for him then, but for the many critics who say it's all Democratic lawfare. Plus, Republicans inching toward control of both the House, they already control the U.S. Senate, bicameral majority. Is that coming?
If you look at President Trump's performance in carrying Senate candidates over the line, there is no modern-day candidate of either party who turns out voters more effectively than President Trump. So we feel very optimistic that we're going to pick up seats.
Changing here, but here's the makeup right now for U.S. control of the House. Now, remember, Republicans had it going into this election season. Donald Trump wins, president-elect now, and it helps some people and others there, the voters decide. But right now, Republicans are still in the lead. They flipped 6 seats. Democrats have flipped 4. And 2 Republican challengers in Pennsylvania defeated Democrat incumbents. So far, the GOP, again, 6 seats they flipped for a net gain of 2. Democrats, again, flipped 4. So they each had to do the same job. Republicans are running faster because of the counts, and they're running ahead. We're still waiting, though, for 25 House races to be called. So we can't look at this and say, yeah, this is going to happen for Republicans, or, yeah, this is going to be overtaken by Democrats. We don't know. The voters know. Several there with Republican incumbents are still too close to call. So you're looking at the races that are pending right now. Watch this.
There's a path for Democrats to be in a very thin majority, and if we're not in a thin majority, it's going to be a very thin majority for Republicans. We know how that works. We were just in that, but we would much rather be in a position where the House can fence in the worst instincts of Donald Trump through our oversight and accountability measures by being in the majority. But we'll wait and see on it.
Jason Chaffetz, Fox News contributor, former Republican congressman of Utah, and Focus with me now. So, Jason, just your first reaction to the 25 that are still have not been decided yet, too close to call.
Well, shame on the states that take forever to actually count these votes. But above and beyond that, a lot of the Republican numbers, if not most of the Republican numbers, continue to get better. And they get better because Donald Trump was at the top of the ticket. Donald Trump has these coattails that just really help these House races. And so many of the people voted on the day of the election. Those numbers are much higher for Donald Trump than Kamala Harris. And so you have races like in Arizona, Dave Schweikert, who's was behind, but now is up and ahead. He represents Scottsdale, Arizona. And so you have races like that where it just keeps getting better and better for the Republicans.
Well, and when you look at the differential, which you just pointed out, the big thinking was, and you heard this word, cannibalized votes for Donald Trump, that people would big and bold for the first time in huge numbers vote early for Donald Trump, but that there wouldn't be enough of them left on Election Day to help him win. Well, that wasn't even close to being right.
That was totally wrong. And there had a lot of people who decided day of. Donald Trump just kept getting stronger and stronger. Kamala Harris got weaker and weaker. I love that graphic I saw that showed that Kamala Harris, not even in not one county in the United States of America, did she outperform Joe Biden. And that's playing itself out now in these House races.
Well, look, voters around the nation rejected Democrats' woke ideology as an example, but some schools apparently didn't get that memo. They're also going to just ignore the people's choice. There are reports that high schools and universities across the nation have canceled classes and provided safe spaces for students. The goal is to help them, and this is a quote, recover from the presidential election. Well, this prompted a wave of criticism that these schools aren't preparing students for the real world. Georgetown University reportedly invited students to a self-care suite on Wednesday to recover from the stress of the 2024 presidential election. Some Harvard professors canceled classes because some students were sad over the election's outcome. Some also encouraged students to process in the aftermath of the election, adjusting course requirements so they could do so. Look, Jason, this is why a lot of their bills are down at some of the most elite colleges. Their balance sheets are about to be out of whack because parents are thinking, well, look, my kid doesn't think like that. My kid's not, as liberal as these schools. Why would I spend all of my cash putting them there? People are making decisions on this kind of behavior that these schools are displaying today.
It's so embarrassing. Campus Reform did some good research there. There's a FoxNews.com story about this. I mean, they were bringing in therapy goats. They were offering these kids so they could assemble Legos to distract them from the grieving that they were having to go through. Grow up. You're an adult. Donald Trump, your life is going to be better under Donald Trump. It's not going to be worse. And if you're crying and grieving and you just can't handle it, take a deep breath. The United States of America is the greatest country on the face of the planet, and the overwhelming majority of people voted for Donald Trump. Maybe you're on the wrong side of the issue, and maybe you should show some optimism that, hey, this country is going to figure things out. We were on the wrong track, and now we're going to get back on the right track. So it should be a glorious day, not one where you have to get a therapy goat and put together some Legos, for goodness sake.
Goats are cute, though. I'll just put that right in there. Look, the seriousness in all of this is that, Jason, and you and I talk about this with our families all the time. You have to be resilient. And we're seeing it modeled for kids on these college university campuses and high schools where resilience is not the roll call of the day, that the rally cry is be weak and let us make you weaker by sowing the seeds of weakness that are already in you. Your last word.
You have a generation where everybody got a trophy. And you know what? The kids didn't learn how to win and to lose. And when you have that kind of attitude and that coddling bringing up, suddenly you go to college and you can't cope. So come on, parents. Time to get a grip, grow up, teach these people to be adults, and deal with adversity, if that's what they think adversity is.
Ooh, a lot of wisdom from you on this fine Friday after the election, Jason Chaffetz. Always good to see you. Thank you.
Thanks, Harris.
The White House still says President Biden will not pardon his son Hunter Biden for his federal gun and tax convictions. Could President-elect Trump be Hunter's best hope? Trey Gowdy, next. Plus, the manslaughter trial of Marine veteran Daniel Penny continues.
In a nutshell, here's what's going on. Justification is the defense, okay? And it's really very simple in that sense. Did Daniel Penny go too far?
Jurors are back after a dramatic testimony about what happened inside that New York City subway and watch dramatic video of the struggle inside that New York City subway car last year. Prosecutors claim Penny's recklessness caused the death of a homeless man named Jordan Neely. Penny's defense attorney says they have a different argument in all of this and that he was protecting people, and they have witnesses. Daniel Penny faces up to 19 years in prison if he's convicted. Retired NYPD inspector and attorney Paul Morrow with this.
One of the things that's at play here is the state of mind of the people in that car. That's crucial here because, in a nutshell, here's what's going on. Justification is the defense, okay? And it's really very simple in that sense. Did Daniel Penny go too far? Was he justified in doing what he did? Were his actions commensurate with the threat that was posed by Neely, all right? And that's a tough balancing act to establish.
CB Cotton is outside the courthouse. CB.
Hi, Harris. Well, jurors just heard testimony from a woman who said she used her stroller to shield her 5-year-old son as Jordan Neely made threats on the subway. She said Neely never lunged at her, but that she felt relieved when Daniel Penny stepped in. Now, Harris's dramatic testimony comes on the heels of Penny's defense team asking the judge to declare a mistrial yesterday. The defense taking issue with witness testimony from Johnny Grimma, a formerly homeless man who said when he saw Penny release Neely from the chokehold, he was worried. Jurors were shown this photo as Grimma described Neely's body as, quote, limp. He said he tried to check on Penny by pouring water on, check on Neely rather, by pouring water on his head, but he says he was told to stop by Penny. He compared the Marine veteran to an abuser. Penny's defense team telling the judge between this testimony and prosecutors' opening statements, there's no way for his client to get a fair trial. The judge denied the motion, and the judge reminded the courtroom to try and hide their emotions following one woman's testimony yesterday, where she said in part, quote, but in that moment when Mr. Penny took him down, I did feel a sense of relief that the threat was under control, and but the situation was still not under control. And then we heard this dramatic 911 call.
There's a guy in the train saying that he's ready to go to jail. He was going to harm people until a guy who stepped in, and now he's holding him down.
So obviously, as you can see, Harris, some of this witness testimony appears it could help Daniel Penny's case. Other witness testimony could hurt him during the deliberation process. Prosecutors argue with Penny's military training and background, he should have known the chokehold could have hurt or killed Neely, whereas Penny's defense team says their client had no time to de-escalate the situation and acted to protect others. A lot more to watch here at the courthouse. Back to you.
CB, great reporting. Thank you.
His son, Hunter, is also up for being sentenced next month. Does the president have any intention of pardoning him?
We've been asked that question multiple times. Our answer stands, which is no.
Just to follow up on the pardon question, is a commutation also still off the table?
For who you're talking about? Oh, no. I mean, we're not. That's not what we're going to do.
The White House insists President Biden will not pardon his son Hunter or commute his sentence. The first son faces sentencing next month on federal gun and tax convictions. Those felony gun convictions make prison time, well, it's a reality. It's a real possibility. But if his father will not pardon Hunter before he leaves office, maybe the president-elect would?
Will you pardon Hunter Biden?
I wouldn't take it off the books. See, unlike Joe Biden, despite what they've done to me, they've gone after me so viciously.
Some mixed reviews on that idea. Piers Morgan says President Trump should pardon Hunter Biden. That would go a long way to setting the right tone for bringing a very divided America back together again. Republican Senator Ron Johnson says no way.
I don't think he should pardon Hunter. I think we need to be very careful about having a dual system of justice where, the powerful or the sons and daughters of the powerful get off scot-free. I could see possibly commuting the sentence, reducing it, and it wouldn't surprise me if President Trump would do that.
Trey Gowdy, former South Carolina congressman and host of Sunday Night in America. So, Trey, I want to start right there with what the senator was talking about in terms of you're sending the wrong message if the offspring of a really powerful man, his dad, the current president, gets a break from the next president.
I have a lot of respect for Senator Johnson, but I was a state and federal prosecutor. When I was a gun prosecutor, I never would have brought this case. So, yeah, you're right. The sons of fame and daughters of famous people should not be treated better. They also should not be treated worse. I have yet to talk to a federal prosecutor that would have brought this gun charge. We would have put him in drug court. We would have put him in a diversion program, but we would not have prosecuted. There are so many convicted felons out there that are committing violent acts with guns that are prohibited persons. We would not have taken this drug case.
But what about the tax charges? I mean, and the conviction there? I mean, that's something where he took taxpayer money in certain places because he didn't pay millions of dollars that he owed to the IRS. What message does it send if President-elect Trump then addresses that with a commutation or a pardon of that?
Well, those are two very different things. And a pardon wipes it clean, like it never happened. A commutation, I mean, think about it, Harris. I mean, despite what Donald Trump has been through, people that know him know he actually is a compassionate person. I mean, what did he say about Hillary Clinton after he beat her in 2016? She's been through enough. Well, Joe Biden's been through a whole lot more than she ever went through. He lost his family in a car wreck. He lost a son to cancer. You really want him to spend the last years of his life going to visit his remaining child in federal prison? Is that what you want? Commute the sentence. Leave the consequences in place. He's a convicted felon. He can never have another gun. But what is prison going to do for a non-violent? Prison is for violent offenders, to me, not for non-violent offenders.
So that's interesting. See, the two cases are very different, the gun charge versus the tax. And people who just voted predominantly, they say, on the economy and their own tax dollars, that, I think, resonates with people. So the president does have a big choice to make, the president-elect. Let's see what he does with it. Meanwhile, Trump's victory likely means the end of his legal battles for himself. And that would also mean a win for many of the critics who said it was all Democratic lawfare. Well, in the Georgia election case, the State Court of Appeals is considering whether to disqualify Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis. Remember her? And her ex-boyfriend, extramarital affair for him, Nathan Wade, and that whole fiasco and drama. And they were trying the case against Trump? Yeah. A judge already eliminated some charges from the indictment. One headline, Fani Willis RICO case has bleak future after Trump election. And Trump may not be sentenced for his 34 New York criminal convictions either. Judge Juan Merchan says he plans to rule on presidential immunity by Tuesday. The Department of Justice has already signaled it would toss Trump's two federal cases. Chief legal correspondent Shannon Bream was with me yesterday.
Those federal cases are likely to go away. But New York has these very powerful cases against President Trump that they may want to milk those for all that they're worth. You and I covered that trial there in New York with Judge Merchan. He did not decide in favor of the Trump team on almost anything. It is possible he decides to move ahead with the sentencing. That could come well before January 20th. New York authorities may want to just press as much as they can before January.
So, Trey, you know what? I had forgotten how much they had thrown at him until just this moment. I mean, I hadn't been focused on that in the last 10 days or so. But when you look at it stacked like that, and add on to that Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, who said just this week she plans to go after him. She campaigned on trying to get Trump. What do you make of all of it?
Keep talking. Keep doing it. That's exactly why you got hammered on Tuesday night. Keep doing that. Keep using our justice system as a political weapon. And he may, who knows, they may amend the Constitution and let him serve a third term. We may get a supermajority in the House and the Senate if these coastal elite liberals continue their thought process when it comes to our justice system. The Georgia case, Harris, really ought to be a Lifetime movie. Lifetime channel movie. I mean, there is so much drama there. There's almost no legal substance. New York, I was in the courtroom with Shannon. Juan Merchan didn't give a single jump ball to Donald Trump, but he's not stupid enough to sentence a president-elect to an active in custodial prison sentence, I think he's going to let it go. That's what he should do, and just move on and get past this notion of using either the state or federal justice systems to go after your political enemies.
Yeah, I tell you what, if they did make a movie out of that whole thing with Georgia, Fonnie Willis, and Dwayne and Nathan Wade, they'd have to put a caution sticker on it. Warning for substance. Could be tough to watch.
It'd be NC-17, and you and I wouldn't go see it.
I live with a 17-year-old. Maybe we could get her to take us. Constitutional law attorney Jonathan Turley writes that Trump's victory will stop Democrats from packing the U.S. Supreme Court. And he believes Trump could have the chance to choose 2 more justices if Clarence Thomas or Samuel Alito were to retire. Some Democrats are calling for Justice Sonia Sotomayor to step down. That could give Biden time to nominate a liberal justice before leaving office. Here's Turley.
That would be a remarkably stupid decision, in my view. It's really disgraceful to see the left turning on her as they did previously with Justice Breyer. But what happens if you miss the mark? Yeah, that's what's the problem with these short sellers, is that they make these demands. What happens if you don't get it? Then you've got a vacant seat on the Supreme Court, and Trump could have 3 nominees.
Politico lays out Democrats' agony over this issue. Trey, look at this. 2 months from now, Republicans will be in control of the U.S. Senate, and as soon as Donald Trump is sworn in, they'll be revving up the old conveyor belt of conservative judicial nominees, tilting the courts further in their favor for decades. For Democrats, this is a hair-on-fire moment. Your reaction?
Yeah, there's nothing they can do about it. They lost the Senate. They've been begging these. I mean, Sonia Sotomayor, by judicial standards, is not old. Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, I would not be surprised if they allowed him to fill the slot. What you don't want is a David Souter who can't remember who put him on the bench. What you don't want are other federal judges who Republicans put on the bench, but they got amnesia. So I think Trump will get 2, but I don't think they're going to get. Sonia Sotomayor's got a job for life, and she knows that. I don't think she's going anywhere. Plus, they can't get it done before the inauguration. They don't have the time to vet and nominate and confirm a Supreme Court justice. So it's wishful thinking.
Trey Gowdy, great to have you break it down for us on a Friday. Thank you. The Harris and Biden camps are trading blame for the vice president's devastating election loss, and the White House is under pressure now to answer for any role Joe Biden may have played in her demise.
Does the president feel any responsibility for the outcome?
Does the president have any regrets? So does he have any regrets?
If you can or want to address the criticism that's being directed at him for this loss.
Well, look, a lot of people say it's time to stop blaming and figure out what led so many voters to ditch Democrats. Will they do that? Will they do that necessary introspection? Power panel next. Said, quote, Joe Biden is the singular reason Kamala Harris and Democrats lost tonight, end quote. That was Tuesday, obviously. Obama campaign manager turned Harris strategist David Plouffe posted, we dug out of a deep hole, but not enough, a devastating loss, and then reports that he shut down his X account. Former Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang, the biggest onus of this loss is on President Biden. And White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre faced tough questions.
President Biden believes that he made the right decision when he decided to step aside and immediately endorsed the vice president, and you saw the party come behind her, support her, and he believed it was the right thing for the American people. He put himself aside.
Does he have any regrets?
The president understands that he's going to respect the will of the people. He believed he made the right decision when he stepped aside, decided that he wasn't going to run. We can't rewrite history.
50 years, President Biden was there for Democrats, on their side, ran into his 80s. And then all of this. Biden officials are hitting back. One aide says there is no singular reason why we lost. But a big reason is because the Obama advisors publicly encouraged Democratic infighting to push Joe Biden out. Didn't even want Kamala Harris as the nominee. Oh boy, get your tea and some popcorn. Power panel now, Cassie Smedley, Vice President of COIN and former RNC Deputy Communications Director, and Brad Howard, President of the Corcoran Street Group. So, Brad, I want to go to you first just on what it looks like behind the scenes right now. I know you're pretty tied in. Losing with grace is an option.
Yeah, I mean, I think the vice president certainly lost with grace. I thought that speech was an incredible speech. I think it reminded folks that, even though she's conceding this fight, which she conceded, which is the appropriate thing to do, that we're not going to concede this fight. And I think this fight is for a vision for America that we
Okay, we don't need her talking points, Brad, but I would love an answer to the question. So she took the high road, is what you're saying. They didn't follow her on it. What is going on inside your party?
Yeah. No, I agree. There's a lot of soul searching going on with the party and everyone looking to blame. Now is not the time to blame. Now is the time to figure out what went wrong. It is not voters' responsibility to come to us. It's our responsibility to go to them. And voters do not like where we are or where we are going. And so we've got to fix that. There's no singular problem why we lost. When you lose nearly every sub-demographic possible, that is a major, major problem. That is not tweak around the edges. That is not blame one president or the nominee or the liberals or the conservatives. It is just a across the board problem, and we've got to fix it.
Yeah, it looks like in some cases in your party, blaming the voters is on the table. And as you just pointed out, don't blame them, interview them. Axios writes this: the road to Democrats' Damascus requires deep, honest self-reflection, and many party insiders tell us entirely new leadership. Peggy Noonan with this op-ed: a triumph for Trump's Republicans. That party needs an intellectual autopsy, an audit of its beliefs. Yesterday, a Harris Campaign Finance Committee member reiterated that.
There's going to be a lot of soul searching the next couple of days. I hope that we can do an honest assessment and not criticize the people who have ideas and solutions about how we can move forward. Because if we do not acknowledge the rightward turn of America, we're going to keep losing.
Cassie.
Yeah, I think what Brad said, that soundbite you played right there, that's the right prescription for what Democrats should be doing as they go forward. Any party, when you lose, I mean, I've been on the losing side of election nights as well. You say, okay, where did we get this wrong? Where did the voters fundamentally disagree with our message? And that's what needs to be happening on the Democrat side. Instead, the finger pointing or just frankly saying, the person should have won it. Kamala should have been enough, or Joe Biden should have been enough. That's where you're getting it wrong. The American people writ large, as Brad said, every demographic nearly in the country shifted towards Republicans and for Donald Trump, but also down the ballot Republicans on Tuesday night, because there was a fundamental disagreement with the message Democrats have been putting forth for years now, the policies that have been coming out of this White House and Democrat-controlled Congresses, and there needed to be a decisive reckoning against that, and that's what the American people delivered. And the Democrats, if they want to win again, they would be wise to take note of that and not point fingers at people.
Look, I talk to voters all the time, election night, live audience, voters' voices, and I make it my business to know their business, what works and what doesn't in their lives. And I got to tell you, there were a lot of relieved Democrats and Republicans and independents whom I've been talking with this week, because they can now talk about their politics openly. So to see one side still want to punish voters is really a tough spot to be in. I'm hoping that the left will take Brad's lead on this. Former Democratic National Committee Chair Howard Dean offered this advice.
The problem is we haven't done a damn thing since 2008 about getting out into the grassroots. I always call Washington middle school on steroids, because they work hard, they're very smart, and it's all about them all the time.
Brad.
Well, first of all, Harris, I'll say that you do a fantastic job of tapping into what voters are concerned about, and always admire that about you. And I love coming on. That's the reason I love coming on your show.
Tất cả các bạn, chào mừng các bạn đã đến với kênh YouTube của mình. Hôm nay mình sẽ hướng dẫn các bạn móc một chiếc lót ly có họa tiết là xoắn ốc như thế này. Ở đây mình sẽ sử dụng sợi màu hồng và sợi màu xanh dương đậm để làm phần xoắn ốc. Mình đã móc bằng các mũi đơn. Đối với phần viền, mình sẽ sử dụng mũi sò. Một nửa mình sẽ móc mũi sò màu xanh, một nửa mình móc mũi sò màu hồng. Ở đây mỗi mũi sò mình móc gồm có 5 mũi nửa kép chung một chân. Đối với phần nơ trang trí, mình chập đôi 2 sợi lại với nhau, sau đó là tạo vòng tròn ma thuật. Tiếp đến móc mũi xích, mũi kép chung chân, mũi xích, móc 2 phần tương tự như vậy, sau đó buộc thắt nút để tạo nơ. Sợi mình sử dụng có kích thước là 1mm và kim móc có kích thước là 2mm. Ngoài ra thì cần chuẩn bị thêm keo nến để gắn nơ và kéo dùng để cắt sợi thừa. Nếu các bạn yêu thích video, hãy nhớ nhấn vào nút đăng ký kênh, like, share video để ủng hộ mình ra nhiều video hơn nữa nha. Dạ vâng, cháu bao toàn bằng sợi màu xanh. Năm mũi đơn vào chói ba thuật. Đối sợi màu hồng. Tiếp tục móc 5 mũi đơn bằng sợi màu hồng. Rút ra nút ở giữa. Năm mũi tăng bằng sợi màu hồng. Tiếp tục móc 2 mũi đơn vào chung một chân. Móc bằng sợi màu xanh. Hai mũi đơn vào chung một chân. Móc 5 lần như vậy. Hai mũi đơn vào chung một chân lần thứ 3. Móc một sợi màu hồng. Một mũi đơn. Hai mũi đơn vào chung một chân.